What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 20 of State of the Wizards. I am hosting this evening. It's probably the first time you guys see me do this in a long time, but I have my main man over here, Dcan. I'm your host, Kjose. Dcan, how you feeling this evening, my brother?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. Switching roles, it's a little weird for a second, but it's good, man. It's all good. I'm really happy that we can get another episode in together. It's been a while.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. So for tonight's episode, we're going to actually address or answer some of the questions of our followers. So that's what's going to be one of the topics that we're going to be addressing. But before we even start, make sure you guys follow me on IG at DC Hoopla. Also follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to my YouTube channel under the same name. And also follow my man over here, Dcan, at Wizards Mafia on Twitter, IG. Definitely subscribe to his his Spotify, which he's actually doing pretty good. So, and definitely subscribe to State of the Wizards on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on IG as well as Twitter. So, Dcan, we have a couple of questions that people want us to answer and more so cover. So this is from DC Sports Coffee. He actually gave us quite a few topics to talk about. So the first one we're going to address is the breakdown of the Wizards salary cap situation and possibly them going into the luxury tax.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the salary cap situation? Let's pretend Bradley Beal is re-signed as a Wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that salary cap situation. How would that look going forward for this team for the next 5 years? Now factor in Bradley Beal making his money. KP has his current contract right now. And then you're looking at guys like Kuzma that's going to be looking for a contract. Denny, Rui, Kisper, a guy like KCP. Let's have a conversation about how that would look for this team going forward.
Okay. All right. Well, let's look at it here. So let's go ahead and go to Wizards right now, right?
Okay.
So what was the question? The question was pertaining to salary cap.
Right. The Wizards salary cap situation.
Okay. And how it would look in the future without Bill or with Bill?
With Bill.
With Bill?
Right. Well, let's do it without Bill since you got it up there right now.
Okay. All right. Well, without Bill, so let's go ahead and take a look. So if you see here, next season, Bill is commanding $36 million. With his extension, he would be commanding about $46 to $47 million.
Right.
And then that salary would increase every year after the first year. So let's just say, for example, if Bill is on the team, and with the cap right now at 127, I think it's supposed to go up to about 145.
Right.
All right. So right now, the way that it looks is you don't have a player making more than $40 million a year. So Bradley Beal's at 33, Porzingis at 31, and then everyone else you'll see very minimum contracts. After next season, going into 2022-2023, you'll have Bradley Beal 9 times out of 10, if he is opting out, this $36 million that you see right here, this will be wiped away and his new contract would kick in.
Right.
Because this would no longer exist. You'd be looking at about $46 million. So you'd have to tack on $10 million more for Bradley Beal's new salary. Porzingis at 33. And then the other two guys, KCP, Kuzma. Here's the big question mark. What do you give Thomas Bryant if you will retain Thomas Bryant this offseason? Is he going to command anywhere around $8 million? In my opinion, he probably asked for a little bit more, maybe 10 to 12 million.
Right.
So that's about roughly what? Let's round that off to about $14 million additional.
Right.
And then who are you going to replace at the spot for Neto? And what are you going to do with, who are you going to replace Gill with? All of these very minimal contracts, at that very moment in time, you'd have to figure out, who you can sign on 1 year or 2 year deals like you did for these guys down here on very minimal contracts. And see, the salary cap doesn't increase immediately. It only goes up to about 145. And that's, I want to say that's at the end of next season, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're talking about additional 14, 15, you'd be looking at about maybe 136. You're probably almost right at the cap. And that's not even including all of the additional guys that I just mentioned who you haven't signed yet on 1 or 2 year deals. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to be right at the cap ceiling. Under Bill's new structured contract, they'd be right at the cap ceiling.
Okay. So one thing that I did see when this was by Oz, where he actually factored in Bradley Beal's contract, and then he put Malcolm Brogdon in there. And I believe I think he had Malcolm Brogdon making somewhere between, I got to go back and look at it, but I think it was anywhere between 15 to 20 million a season, something like that.
Yeah, Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, Brogdon. I called him Brogdon. Brogdon, my fault. Yeah. Brogdon. So I remember he had him on there. And I think the salary cap for the team was probably around that, close to that 140 range. And I think we were like maybe 4 million away from hitting a luxury tax. So let's just nip all of it in the bud. We know that Ted Leonsis has not paid over the luxury tax since he's on the team. And I don't believe he's going to do that going forward just for a team that possibly may make the 6th or the 8th seed in the East. Because we have to factor in that the Eastern Conference is competitive. There's parity, and it's only going to get better each season. You never know. I mean, Damian Lillard could eventually get traded into the East. A Zion Williamson could get traded into the East, and that changes the dynamic of the Eastern Conference with a lot of teams. So it would make sense if the team does not re-sign Bill. We don't have to just because.
Well, again, if you look at the way the structure, so that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about filling in. You have 1, 2, 3, and then you have these. What are these qualifiers?
Right.
On Ayayi and Cassius Winston. These guys are just roster fillers. Roster fillers. But really, Thomas Bryant was a core piece.
Right.
So are you just letting him walk? Are you just letting Raul Neto walk? I mean, at this point, is it safe to say that we're not re-signing those guys? And then if you're not, you're saving roughly, let's see, $2 million Neto is commanding this season. Gill's only at 1.5. These guys are going to want more money next season. Thomas Bryant's going to want more money. But do you let these guys walk and then, save yourself $15 million under the cap, and you say, well, who can we sign for $15 million in the offseason that would, contribute to the team right away if it's not re-signing Thomas Bryant, Raul Neto, or Gill? I mean, that would be the question. Right. So the point is that, let's just say, even if you sign someone or if you find someone that's willing to take on that type of, commanding that type of salary, you're still having to fill in other spots. And I mean, unless you're signing G League guys, I just don't see how with Bill's contract you really make, it really makes sense, or it really makes this thing work, especially when we're talking about long term. Because getting into that next, right? So you have to worry about it. You have to worry about Porzingis' contract in 2023.
Because he's going to opt in.
He'll opt in, right? And he'll command an extension prior to opting in.
Right.
It'll be another Bill situation, really, because, he'll look at it like, hey, if I'm not getting the amount of money that I'm commanding, then I'll just opt out, and I can potentially do the exact same thing. I could force my way out, maybe in a sign and trade, sign somewhere else. 6 months after I play there, I'll get a contract extension. I mean, it's just the name of the game. Some players have that ability to do that. Some players don't. Bradley Beal does. That's why I truly believe that he'll opt in, right? And then he'll demand that trade, because I think that he's looking at it like, well, I can still get my money elsewhere. I can still command $240+ million somewhere else, maybe on a competitive team. That brings me to my next point. That competitive team could be Boston or Philadelphia, or Golden State.
Right.
So, this to me, it makes more sense for Bill than it would it makes more sense for Bill to do this than the Wizards to give Bill that contract.
Right. So since you brought up, so here's one thing I want to focus on. So to kind of piggyback, Porzingis and Kuzma, both of those two players have player options in the same year, 2023, 2024. Now, I believe that Porzingis is most likely going to opt in on that deal. One of the things I had read that he said earlier was that, hey, I don't think my best, years are past me. He's 26 years old. So he's still saying, hey, I got more left in the tank, which he does. So he's going to try to prove himself. But Kuzma is also have a player option that year. What do you think he's going to do? Most likely he's going to opt out, and he's going to be asking for more money. So for everybody that wants Kuzma to grow with this team, how does that work if Bradley Beal is eating 35% of the cap, and you got Porzingis making his $36 million also looking to get paid? How do you pay two guys more money? How is that even possible?
Well, again,
what's Kuzma going to command?
Well, again, I mean, right, because you have to factor that all in. Like, this isn't just a 1 year. This isn't the Wizards just working this out year to year. This is the Wizards trying to work this out long term.
Right. Because
if you give Bill 35% of the cap, you have to start working in or reworking in everyone else's salary in around Bradley Beal's contract extension.
Exactly.
So there's a good possibility that you're paying 3 guys, maybe even 4 guys. You're paying potentially 4 guys upwards of $100 million. And you still have 10 other roster spots to worry about.
Right.
And then you're only left with, like I said, you're only left with a couple of guys that's making maybe $1 or $2 million here and there. But why are we continuing to work this way? Why are we continuing to operate this way? Right. There's only so many guys that are willing to take vet minimums. There's only so many guys willing to accept $3-4 million. This was just by circumstances. Howard Neto was on his way out the league, and we picked him up for $2 million.
Right.
See? So anyway, I say all that to say, when you look at Bradley Beal's salary and his potential salary, you're going to have to rework Porzingis, rework Kuzma, rework, Rui in the future, rework Denny in the future, rework Thomas Bryant's contract. All of this stuff is predicated off of what you do with Bradley Beal and his current contract that's going to be eating up 35% of the salary cap.
Exactly. So in other words, Wizards fans, this offseason is very critical for this organization going forward, because how they handle Bradley Beal is going to tell you what this team is going to be looking like in the future for the next 5 years. A lot of you guys are pro Beal getting his money, but at the same time, we're not going to be able to bring good, solid players alongside of Bradley Beal if he and Porzingis together are eating anywhere between 55 to 60% of the salary cap, because Kuzma's not going to take no discount. Maybe Rui Hachimura might not cost for so much. Thomas Bryant may not cost for so much. But if Rui and Denny start playing very well, if Rui has a breakout season, especially if he finished this season off in the second half strong, do you really think that you're going to be able to give Rui something like 10, 12 million a season? He's going to possibly command more than that. So it's a situation that can turn ugly. Like every player on this team, I don't expect Rui, Kuz, or Denny, or even Kisper to take an Anthony Gill type of contract where he's getting paid maybe $2 million a season. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So Bradley, again, let's just go back real quick. Bradley Beal's new contract would increase every year. And then we're only going on the assumption that the salary cap increases every year as well. So if it's going up to roughly 145 by the end of next season, and then you have the CBA, which I think expires after the end of next season as well. We don't know what the new ceiling is going to be, for the salary cap. Let's just assume that it's 150.
Right.
All right. Let's just assume that it's 150. Are we going to sit here if the salary cap is 150 after the 2023-2024 season? You're looking at what here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Bill 9 times out of 10 would be probably about 49 million. Porzingis' new contract, you're probably looking at about 44 million a season. So, let's kind of do some math real quick. It's only going to take a second to do that. So you're looking at 49 million plus about 44 million. I think people would say there's no way that he would command that much. Look at this. Look at this number right here. 36 million.
I mean, he's pretty much has the same identical contract as what Bill has.
Exactly. So let's just say he's making about 4 or 5 million less than what Bill is making right now. With the new salary cap, he'd be making 4 or 5 million less than what Bill is potentially going to make. So 49 million for Bill, 44 million for Porzingis. In 2024-2025, you got Kuzma's contract. 9 times out of 10, he's going to command, a max contract, right?
Yeah, so we'll say give or take. Let's just say Kuzma's getting 25 million that year.
25.
We'll add him in there at 25.
Okay, so that puts us at 118 million right there.
So, so with Thomas Bryant, we'll just play around with him. Let's say he's getting 12 million a season. Let's say they resign him for 12 million.
12 million for Thomas Bryant. You're at 130. So between 4 players, you're already at 130. And you still have 10 other roster spots to fill with $20 million left to spend on under the cap. Or else Teleonsis would be hitting the luxury.
Which some people believe he's willing to go into the luxury tax, but I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. I mean, these guys got to show us something. They have, look, what I will say, and we've addressed this in a previous State of the Wizards episode. What I will say is it's a 2-year window. It's a 2-year window. So I'm just saying, you don't have that long. You got this season, you got next season. And then in 2023, 2024, you got options. You got option years for Kuzma and Porzingis. So what if they decide they don't want to be Wizards? You see what I'm saying? We don't even make it here. We don't even make it to the 2024-2025 season with Bill's new contract if these guys decide that they don't want to stay in Washington.
And it's a possibility that could happen.
Exactly. So with that said, the Wizards, I said 2 years, but in actuality, it's almost like a year and a half. They don't really have 2 years. Right. They don't have 2 years. They have like a year and a half.
I'm gonna say this by looking at the situation. In the 2023 off season is when they really have to make a decision on what they want to do. Really, they actually have, the 2023 off season, because of the fact that Porzingis and Kuzma, they both can opt out next off season, and they both could command. Now, I do believe that Porzingis is going to opt in. He's going to take that money, but Kuz, I'm not quite too sure. If Kuzma, has a good season next year, he's most likely going to want to get his money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I believe.
But if Bill's already on the books, it's going to be hard to pay him what he wants.
Oh, I know that. It's definitely going to be hard. That's why it doesn't make sense.
For the Wizards, it doesn't make any sense.
Sign Bradley Beal because it's impossible. You can't have the general. Tommy can't say, I'm not willing to mortgage the future, but then at the same time, you're willing to give Bradley Beal a super duper max. It just does not make sense. It's not adding up.
So basically, all in all, Wiz Nation, what we are saying is that if you extend Bradley Beal and give him 35% of the cap, you're not going to be able to afford enough money to put together a winning championship basketball team because we're going to be too busy paying mid-level players $25, $26 million. Porzingis better show up as a superstar player besides Bradley Beal because if it's not, then guess what? We're pushing the restart button all over again. Are you guys really ready to go through another possible rebuild under Bill because he's making $49 million a season? I mean, that's really the only options that we have at this point, is that we're hoping Kuzma or Porzingis turns out to be superstar caliber players alongside Bradley Beal, where we can afford to pay these guys max contracts, and they're giving us exactly what we expect out of them night in and night out with no drop off. And we're basically, buying the idea that this is a potential championship team where Ted Leonsis is willing to go into the luxury for these players, for said players, knowing that Bill is making that type of money.
Right.
Is this more of a realistic situation than just saying, go ahead and trade Bill, get him off the books, work around guys like Porzingis and Kuzma, just in case they don't work out? At least you are saving yourself a combined, here we go, a combined, because we just did the math, 100, and because minus Thomas Bryant's contract, would you say 12 million?
Yeah.
We were at 130.
Yeah.
Minus the 12, you're saving yourself a potential $118 million if this just doesn't work.
Right.
Think about that.
Exactly.
So
we can go on and on about that.
Let's move on, because at the end of the day, that's what it really boils down to. Does this situation with Bill's contract and him taking up 35% of the cap, does that make more sense for the organization in the future versus just trading him wherever he wants? He still gets paid, and we save ourselves a potential $118 million between three players. If the other two guys don't work, at least we have some money there.
Makes sense to me, man. It makes sense to just not do it. So, all right, we're going to move on. So, DC Sports Coffee wanted us to discuss what Porzingis' ceiling would be as a Wizard. So, Dcan, what do you think Porzingis' ceiling is as a Wizard? He's 26. So what do you think?
First of all, I think this is a great question because Porzingis, I think, is, in my opinion, he's a guy that has a lot of potential when we're talking about him, being the face, right? So that time hasn't passed him yet. There's a good possibility he plays up to what we're expecting out of him.
Right.
Obviously, the questions are whether or not he can remain healthy.
Right.
That's the only thing, because aside from that, when he's healthy, he's averaging about 20 points per game.
Right.
So he's putting up, all-star potential numbers. I'm not saying all-star caliber, but all-star potential numbers. And if he's doing that on a consistent basis for a team that doesn't really have too many superstars, not too many distractions, then he has the potential of being someone in this organization that is the face. I think his ceiling is, I would say, I know probably people going to disagree with me on this, but I say Dirk Nowitzki light. Dirk Nowitzki light. And I'm not saying that he's Dirk, but what I am saying is that if Beal decides to move on and we trade him, and Porzingis is that dude, and he's averaging about 22, 23, it's not Dirk-like numbers, I think you can still make enough noise with the Porzingis in the East if you put the right pieces around him.
I agree with that. So I would say that his ceiling could be all-star caliber. I think he's good enough to be an all-star, a perennial all-star with the Wizards. The main concern that I have is his health. I mean, he has not been healthy since he's been in the league. Now, when you mentioned about the Dirk, I remember that's what he was kind of compared to coming into the league. That was the question that they had, that he could be the next Dirk Nowitzki. But his health has been his Achilles, no pun intended. So and the thing is too, that we also have to remember, and you and I spoke about this on your Wiz takes, Porzingis has a fan base. His nickname is the Unicorn. So people are actually looking forward to seeing him on the court as a Wizard. It was a shocker that we got him pretty much for Spencer Dinwiddie and Bertans. Some people were a little bit concerned of why Dallas was willing to do that. If there's some things about his health that they know that they're not disclosing, but as time goes, we will see. But I believe this guy, when I look at his numbers, he's a 20-10 guy, and he give you 2 blocks a game. He's a stretch 5, so he can step out there and shoot the 3. He got a unicorn nickname for a reason. He's something that we don't really see too much of.
At his size? No, we don't.
We don't see that. So if he can just be healthy and put up those all-star type numbers, I think we'll be fine.
I agree. I think that, it really is about his health, man. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's never strung along an 82-game season in his career.
Right.
But when he's playing, I mean, look at those numbers, man. 19 this season, 19 points per game, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, at least averaging close to 2 blocks, and he's shooting 45% from the field. His 3-point, percentage this season has been sketchy. I mean, that's like Bradley Beal, right? Seems like some guys' 3-point shot this season has really dropped off. I don't know if we will continue to see that in this system with Wes, because maybe Wes starts drawing up some plays for him where he can go on the block. And, what I am most interested in seeing in Porzingis, I want to see that in-between game. I want to see that free throw line extended. Does he put the ball on the floor? Is he able to get to the rim? Is he able to get past his defender? What type of role does he really play in Wes's offense? Wes recently said that he envisions Porzingis like a Jokic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bill more like a Murray. What he envisioned out there in Denver is what he envisions for Porzingis and Bill. I don't really know if that's the type of player that Porzingis has been, but can he be that type of player for us? That's a huge, huge question mark.
I don't think he can be that type of player for us, man. I don't see.
I agree.
I don't see Jokic. I see exactly what he did when he played for the Knicks. He's a guy that's going to play a little bit inside and out, but he's not a guy he's not a Jokic for one, where he has a wide body, where he can just bully in the paint. Porzingis is literally a guy that can go out there at the 3-point line, make his defender come out there and try to guard him, and he puts the ball on the floor. So he's more of a slashing five. I just don't see him as being this Jokic type guy where he's backing it down, willing to kick it out to somebody. I don't see that.
Neither do I. The reason why this is so important, because and that question is raised because why are we assuming that he can do these things if we've never seen him do it? So I know he's called the unicorn, but we literally have never seen him do that. We've never seen him, play that style. I mean, he's averaged 2 assists this season. So is it right for me to assume that he's just going to average, 28 and 8 all of a sudden if he's never been that type of player? When he was in Dallas, Luka was that player. And he set Porzingis up. Right? We don't have a Luka on this team to do that.
Right.
We don't even have a guard for that matter. We don't have a true guard for that matter that can do that. I think we're just assuming that's what he can do, and I don't see that.
Right, I don't see it either. I mean, we just traded away one player that we tried to make him be something that he wasn't, in Spencer Dinwiddie, and now we're acquiring another player and we're trying to make him do something that he's not capable of doing. I mean, Porzingis, all you got to do is look at his assist averages, his career since he's been in the league. He's averaged 1.5 assists. Right. So I don't see how we can expect him to start kicking it out. I think when we try to make him be something that he's not, we will literally be setting him up for failure. So I don't see him being a Jokic type player. I know that Wes tried to clean that up, and he said he wasn't saying that. Wes, I don't even understand why you even decided to use those two guys to describe these two players, because clearly that's not who they are.
Right.
So another question that DC Sports Coffee had was, he asked, how to get fans back to the arena? I'll touch on that and then you can chime in. So to get fans to come back to the games, because I know he mentioned that maybe the ticket prices are too high. So I don't know. Maybe they may be too high, but it's the product that's on the floor. If the product is not good, nobody's going to come to the games. So for one, you got to get something to make people want to come to the games. It's got to be something exciting. Now, maybe Porzingis changes that depending on how the way he plays, but you still need that main attraction player. So perfect example. I'm just going to use that as an example. LeBron James said that wherever his son is drafted, that's where he would go and play. So let's just say in 2024, the Wizards get the number 1 pick. They draft Bronny James. LeBron comes. Asses are going to come to the game to even see 39-year-old, soon to be 40-year-old LeBron play along with his son. That's putting something out there. Now, if you look at our roster, who are the fans going to come see right now? Who are they interested in coming to see?
By, now? Or
right now? Is there a reason? We're 29th in attendance for a reason. Mm-hmm. Shaquille O'Neal said, hey, I'm not interested in the Wizards even when Bradley Beal plays. So Bradley Beal is not even attracting people to come to the games. Even the folks who are saying, hey, we should sign him, you're not going to the games to go watch him.
Right.
So for fans to come back to the games, they got to start winning. But also, too, the product has to look good.
Absolutely.
If the product doesn't look good, nobody's going to come to the games. The thing is, with Wizards Nation, is we have an owner that doesn't seem, and pardon my French, that doesn't seem to give a shit about none of that. He's just only concerned about his bottom line. Long as he's making money, long as everybody's going to that sports book, that's all he's concerned about. He doesn't care about what the product looks like.
Yeah. And I saw his question. He said, realistic suggestion to get fans back in the building. And I mean, what you said, even though what you said made a lot of sense, putting product out there, that makes people come to the arena. It's almost like that's not realistic, right? It's crazy to say, but it's like how difficult is it to just put out a respectable product, where it gets more fans to come to the arena. It seems like we make that so difficult.
Right.
What I can say is that the Porzingis move was actually a good move for possible ticket revenue, right?
Right.
Because, like you said, like I've said, Kristaps Porzingis has a fan base. Kyle Kuzma has a fan base. Rui has a fan base. Denny has a fan base. The more players you get here that have independent fan bases and they all gravitate to one, maybe that does help you sell a lot more tickets. Maybe you start bringing here a little bit more household names that people can recognize, and they say, oh, Porzingis, the unicorn, okay, I can go out there and support the Wizards. They look attractive because they have players that I can recognize on a name, first or last name basis. But why his question is almost so difficult to answer, because there is no realistic suggestions. And that's just the bottom line. The most realistic suggestion would be to put together, what you said, a product where everyone can rally behind and support.
Right.
But the Wizards don't do that well.
Right.
So until they start doing that well, we'll never get fans back into the building. Now, what I can say, however, is what we can start doing is we can do what Abe Pollin used to do. You remember that? Remember what Abe used to do?
Yeah, advertise the opposing team.
Advertise the opposing team. That's a realistic suggestion. Advertise other teams' star players to attract fans to the games. You just might start getting people back in that building.
Yeah, you're right.
However, I know Ted made it a point, at least not publicly, but I think he's seen it throughout the years where, Lakers fans have come and take over the arena. Celtics fans have come in and taken over the arena. I think Ted would much rather have those seats empty than to continue to have fans come here and continue to cheer loudly in the building for the opposing team. In fact, it happened. What game was that? Where it was the most recent game.
It was against the Miami Heat.
Right. The Heat fans showed up in abundance.
Yep.
And it was so embarrassing that even the Comcast, even the post-game crew, the NBC Sports Washington crew, Chris Miller even spoke out about it after the game, saying that he's never heard the arena chant so loudly for the opposing team than what he heard in that Heat game. However, realistically, what you could start doing is start advertising the opposing team's star player and see if Wizards fans would start showing up more just to go out there and cheer against a Jimmy Butler or cheer against a Giannis. That's an option, or that's a realistic suggestion.
Well, I would look at it this way. What Ted Leonsis actually should do is do what the Nats did. Remember, the Nats had that campaign to take back the ballpark because the Philly fans kept coming in there, infiltrating. Yeah. So also, the Nats did have players that people wanted to see. Strasburg, you had Bryce Harper, you had Jason Worth. So they had quite a few players that folks want to see. When it comes down to the Wizards, we don't have a Bryce Harper. We don't have a Strasburg. We don't have a Jason Worth. So we don't really have an amount of players that people want to come see. Mm-hmm. So, which is going to lead me to the next topic, which is about the draft. The team has to make a choice. If you really want, this is if they care about this, because this is DC Sports Coffee's question. But if the team is more concerned about, okay, what can we do to stop opposing fans coming in and taking over and doing MVP chants at our home games? Well, you got to get those type of players here. So that leads to the next topic. The topic that I have, this is not a question that anybody asked, but it's something that you and I see constantly on Twitter, which is about the Wizards missing on their draft picks. So the last 3 draft picks that we've had, fans have complained that we should have drafted this player or we should have drafted that player. So in 2019, we drafted Rui Hachimura. But what was the popular topic was, well, why didn't we draft Cam Reddish? 2020, we drafted Denny. The more popular player was, well, why didn't we draft Tyrese Halliburton? Okay, we drafted Corey Kisper. He was like, well, there was this other guy that was actually available. Why didn't we draft him? The Wizards are missing. I'm not going to say the Wizards are missing. These 3 guys that we have weren't given a bigger opportunity, like the Josh Giddeys, like the Tyrese Halliburtons, like the Tyrese Maxeys and the Thibels. They didn't get that kind of opportunity where they can play and we can see what they have. So the last game we played against the Brooklyn Nets, Rui puts up 20 points. Obviously, the conversation of sending him to the airport changed. I tried to tell people that he could do this and do that, but nobody wanted to listen. No, you didn't. You didn't say that. You were sitting there saying why we didn't draft Cam Reddish. That's what you said. So the Wizards are not missing on the draft picks. They're just not maximizing these guys' potential. Everybody's talking about, well, Isaiah Todd, man, we could get rid of him. Well, we're not giving him the opportunity. Now these guys are getting the opportunity. And now people are changing their perspective of these players because now they're seeing a much larger sample size of these guys. The team is giving these players more bandwidth. Now, how are these guys able to get this playing time? Well, not only did it take trading some players, but it actually took one player to get injured for that to happen. It took one player to get injured. So the Wizards are not missing on these draft picks. They're just not playing these guys. You and I both weren't fans of a Troy Brown, but we didn't see what Troy Brown could do for this team because the team wasn't trying to play him.
Well, Troy Brown was a one-trick pony. And, most people are like, well, what trick was that? That was just running up and down the court. He was good at doing that. He was good at giving you minutes. He was good at, what I can say is, and maybe he didn't get enough credit for this. Look at Anthony Gill's role for us now.
Right.
Troy Brown was like that, but he was picked too high to be an Anthony Gill. Agreed. Anthony Gill was undrafted. So there's no reason why Troy Brown should even be playing in that role when his expectations were so much higher than someone like an Anthony Gill, for example. So that was the reason why Troy Brown was in that, was in that predicament. And that's why fans was on him a little harder, But what I can say, what you said over these, with these last 3 draft picks, I give Tommy Shepard a lot of credit for those draft picks because number one, they were draft picks that a lot of us didn't expect the Wizards to do.
Agreed.
We expected to draft Cam Reddish. We expected to draft. There was another player too who we expected to draft, but we didn't draft him. And we passed on those guys for guys that we scouted. So what we were used to was Ernie not scouting guys.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line was that Ernie was actually referring to Tommy Shepard on the back end of some of those scouted players because that was Tommy's job. But it may have been Ernie's decision at the end of the day to make some of those, to take Jan Vesley, for example, to draft Kelly Oubre, for example, to draft Troy Brown, because I believe Troy Brown came under Ernie Grunfeld as well, right? So Tommy Shepard automatically surpassed those draft picks with these last draft picks, these last 3 draft picks. So we have to give him credit where other drafts didn't look as great. So those draft classes had talent as well. We just didn't pick that talent. Whereas these last 3 draft classes, the talent that those draft classes had, they were so spread out. Like there wasn't, if I'm not mistaken, Killian Hayes was top 5. And look at him in Detroit. He's trash.
Yeah, he is trash.
He's trash. He's a top 5 pick, and he's trash. A lot of those picks that were top 5 in those drafts, the Rui and Denny draft, they weren't knock out the park draft picks. Okay, some of these guys are still trying to find their footing in the league, and to say that Denny is one of the worst draft picks, or to say that Rui was one of the worst draft picks, think about all the other players who were picked before those guys in those drafts. They are worse than they are.
I agree.
So you can't say that Tommy just missed completely on these last 3 draft picks. Those guys aren't finding their footing at all in the league. And some of them are barely cracking 10 to 15 minutes. And Cam Reddish can't even get off the bench in New York after he couldn't get off the bench in Atlanta. Exactly. And I see Wizards fans up here talking about we need to trade for Cam Reddish. Why? So he can come here and not get off the bench? I get it. I get it. Roles are different for each team. But sometimes you have to look at what the players bring to the table in totality. And so Denny is a guy who brings a potential two-way. He's a potential two-way player. Rui, a potential two-way player. Cam Reddish is not that type of player at all. Cam Reddish is a 3-point shooter.
And we already got that. He's a slasher maybe, but to sit there and say that he would be doing better than what Corey Kisper's giving us right now, that's a good comparison. Because if you think about it, we got Corey Kisper at number 15. Maybe that's where Cam Reddish should have been drafted that year. And are we gonna? If you had a choice between Corey Kisper and Cam Reddish, which player are you gonna take?
I'm taking Kisper right now.
There you go. So
and I'm definitely not taking him over Denny or over Rui. So there you go.
No, you don't. Again, with Cam Reddish, this was the concern that I had about him coming out of Duke, because would he be able to take it to the next level? One guy that I know, you and I both know, who's a Duke fan, said, well, Zion and RJ Barrett was kind of taking a shine down there in Duke. Okay, when you was playing down there in Atlanta, what happened? You weren't doing anything. You were barely getting off the bench. And when you did get off the bench, you was stinking up to join. You can count pretty much on hand when he actually had a pretty good game. Now he's in New York, and the coach doesn't even want to play him at all. He didn't even want him traded to the team.
Right, he didn't even want him, yeah.
He didn't want him. So now the Knicks have to make a decision. Is it going to be Reddish or is it going to be Tom Thibodeau? So, I don't think Tommy missed on these draft picks. The thing is that these draft picks are just not the Tyrese Halliburtons. And here's the thing. Who's to say that Tyrese Halliburton will be doing what he's doing now with the Pacers here in Washington when you're still trying to win now? Is Josh Giddey going to be doing what he's doing with OKC in Washington if the narrative is we're trying to win now? The answer is no, they wouldn't be doing that.
Well, here's another thing that I wanted to point out. Just because Tyrese Halliburton is having a good stretch of games right now in his first, 2 years, doesn't mean that that's the longevity of his career. We've seen players before have great starts to their careers, and it didn't mean that they would have long-term success, over the course of their careers. There's a such thing as hitting the wall. And it's not just the rookie wall. We're talking about just hitting the wall as an NBA player. Okay, there's a lot of draft picks in the past that have been great the first 3-4 years. Tyreke Evans was a rookie of the year guy for Sacramento. He was great. He was reliable, but then you start to see him start to fizzle out, and then he started having conduct detrimental issues with the team where he was getting suspended. I do believe, right? So so things started. Dennis Smith is another one, right? Dennis Smith was supposed to be this highly touted, rookie. He was drafted, and brought in on a team that felt like, he was the next guy, right? And then what did you see with his career? He started to fizzle out. So just because, guys are coming in, a ball of fire doesn't mean that fire lasts forever. It's just like anything else. Sometimes guys who peak early, they peak too early in their careers and then they fizzle out.
I
Or you
agree.
have some guys who are just undeveloped and then they develop, later in their careers and they become very, very good players. So
Okay.
it works both ways.
I agree. So this is another question that I have, or another topic that we'll touch on, and I think we'll pretty much wrap it up after this. So the topic that nobody is talking about, you and I have talked about this, but nobody else seems to want to have this conversation. Why are the Wizards having a hard time securing the point guard spot? You care
Um,
to tackle that one?
yeah, so the Wizards are having a hard time tackling the starting point guard role because it's hard for them to find someone or pair that player with our two guard.
Right.
Bradley Beal is a player at this point in his career where his leadership role has evolved into someone who speaks within the organization, who shows a lot of face, who has a lot of say so in what goes on with the team. And so ever since we moved John Wall, Russell Westbrook comes through the door, and Russell Westbrook, in so many ways had to find his way to fit in with Bradley Beal. There was an adjustment period. People don't talk about this. People chalked his adjustment period up to him being injured. Truth is that when Russell Westbrook struggled, there was questions out there whether or not he could play alongside Bradley Beal. And, when he finally found his footing, it was because Russell Westbrook became Russell Westbrook. But that was later on the team where it was then decided by Bradley Beal himself that this was Russell Westbrook's team. That footing came after, Bradley Beal made that statement. Hey, when Russell Westbrook speaks, we listen. He had to make that known publicly. Once that happened, we know that Russell Westbrook, John Wall, they saw each other in Houston. They had their little back and forth. Bradley Beal was there. He heard the whole thing, right? And, it was like that spark that Russell Westbrook needed, and then he got going. And then after the season, Russell Westbrook said, hey, I want to go home and play. Bradley Beal, you should also want out of this organization. You should also demand to leave this organization. I chalk that up as more so of just saying, hey, we can't get it done here together. All right. So let's move on. Spencer Dinwiddie was then recruited by Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal said, hey, I know someone out there who I could play alongside with. Who is that player, Bradley Beal? Spencer Dinwiddie is that guy. Spencer Dinwiddie said, I would love to play alongside Bradley Beal.
Right.
All right. We know the story now, 6-7 months later, him and Bradley Beal don't get along. And I'm chalking that up to, hey, Bill, I'm sorry, but we can't get it done together. So that's 3 guys. But ultimately, the biggest issue is that you can't put another guy next to Bill who's going to challenge Bill at the leadership position because it hasn't worked. So John Wall included, that would be 3 point guards so far that Bill has played with. And I don't care what they've done while they've been here. Those 3 guards have not worked alongside Bradley Beal. So in my opinion, why I believe they're having a hard time filling that spot, because you have to find a point guard who's going to accept the fact that he's not going to be the leader. You know, he's just going to be a guy who's willing to play alongside Bradley Beal and accept a role secondary to Bradley Beal. And the Wizards they're not going to find a star guard who's going to be willing to do that. So, in my opinion, Russell Westbrook would have been that player, but he already showed you that he wasn't willing to do that. He'd rather go home and play than to be that guard that said, hey, I'm going to make it work here with Bradley Beal. He didn't want to do that.
Right, I agree. I mean, if you want to take it a step further on that part with Westbrook, he was willing to go home and defer to LeBron James and Anthony Davis because he felt like if I'm going to defer to anybody, I'm going to at least defer to those guys.
Right.
So
right. Exactly.
While you were talking with the Spencer Dinwiddie situation, what I find so ironic about that situation is that I remember some years back during the time when they kept saying that Wall and Beal didn't see eye to eye. And I remember when they interviewed Bradley Beal and he said, well, me and Wall were both alpha males. We're both alpha dogs. This is our team. He pretty much made it plural. This is our team. So now when you bring Dinwiddie said that his leadership wasn't welcome. He tried to be a leader. He tried to be vocal, but it wasn't welcome. So Dinwiddie was pretty much like, hey, let's do this together. Let's both be leaders and let's do this together. But the door got slammed. Mm-hmm. Now, how is it when the former face of the franchise, it was, oh, well, this is me and John Wall's team. Now that guy's not here, you recruited this guy. He can't have a say-so when it comes down to leadership. Now that Bill is not playing, Kyle Kuzma has taken on that role of being a leader. He's now trying to work with Denny. He's trying to work with Rui. He's building that relationship. So it goes back to what you said and what I say also, that when Bradley Beal's leadership is challenged, it's an issue. Perfect example, Montrezl Harrell. He came in the door. Montrezl Harrell knew right off the top. So this is where I'm going to come to Montrezl Harrell's defense. Montrezl Harrell saw from the very beginning that Bradley Beal was not vocal enough to be the leader. So he took it upon himself. He and KCP were the ones that orchestrated that players only meeting before the season started. Then we started reading reports that Montrezl Harrell was holding his teammates accountable. Yeah, I guess according to Troy Halliburton, shout out to him, it got to the point that some of the teammates didn't want to hear it. Now remember, the narrative was it was Spencer Dinwiddie that the players were having an issue with, but it come to find out it was actually Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell wanted to win. He's coming from two organizations that were actually winning organizations. He was also a former sixth man. But he said, hey, Bill is the leader of this team. I'm here to back him up. But basically, you and I know that had to be a problem with Bradley Beal. He didn't like that. So now Montrezl Harrell is not here anymore. Spencer Dinwiddie is not here anymore. Now we got KP. KP didn't get along with Luka. But KP, from what we just got finished talking about, this guy was actually brought into the league to be a franchise player for the New York Knicks. You don't think he's going to have some things to say? That he's not going to make suggestions of how the way the team should be? I mean, he has a fan base.
Yeah.
Is he going to be willing to sit there and defer? He deferred to, he had a hard time deferring to Luka, which Luka is just, is a superstar in the making.
Right.
Now he's going to have to defer to a guy that's pretty much a complimentary player on just about everybody's team. I don't think that's going to work too well.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen again. I think the assumption is that, we'll find another player that'll be able to play alongside Bradley Beal. Porzingis had a problem with Luka, and no one knows what that issue was. We just knew he had a problem with Luka, right? So the assumption is that we can just keep rotating players in and out to play alongside Bradley Beal. We don't know what is the main issue or the underlying issue that certain players may have here playing alongside him. We just know that when they're here and they're playing with him, so far, the last two guards have been here a year or less. The last 2 years, two guards that you replaced John Wall with have been here a year or less. So to me, what it's looking like and what it sounds like is it's looking like Bradley Beal is an underlying problem within itself. And people want to sit there and say, oh, well, how, there's no proof for this. How can you sit there and say that he's cancerous, this, that, and the third? I'm not making these assumptions. I'm just simply saying, I'm stating a fact.
Look at the point guard rotating door. That's all you got to look at. Why? I mean, not to cut you off, one question. Why, when it comes to Westbrook, nobody asked the question, why did Westbrook ask out? Why? Why did he ask out? Nobody asked that question.
No one asked the question. And we still don't know. We just assume that, hey, he wanted to go home and play. He wanted to be there. But there was a reason why he didn't want to be here anymore. There's a reason why he even told Bill that he should request out. And to be honest with you, I'm not even going to sit there and chalk it up to the fact that, he just looked at the Wizards organization as an incompetent situation. I look at the fact that Russell Westbrook just said, me and you can't play together, bro. So how about I go my way and you go your way, and let's just call it what it is. Right. How do I not know that someone within the organization just said, if you can't play with them and we are attempting to continue to operate with him, but we really don't want to continue to operate with him, try to get him to trade, try to get him to demand out as well. How do I not know that? That could have been said somewhere. Someone could have went to Russell Westbrook, said, hey, Russ, man, I mean, you leaving, you can't play with him. Who can? I mean, we're gonna be stuck with him, bro, when you leave. Well, guess what? I'll try to do you guys one as well and talk to him and see if he'll be willing to leave then.
Right.
How do I not know that conversation had? I can't assume that it was just Russell Westbrook just said, oh, I'm leaving a beautiful situation to go to an even more beautiful situation.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, sorry about that. I felt that, Westbrook, one of the reasons why I think he left because Scott Brooks wasn't going to be here. But at the end of the day,
his road dog wasn't here anymore.
Exactly. So, but at the end of the day, Wizards fans, you have to start asking yourself, okay, we had Wall, he got traded. Okay, we had Westbrook, he asked out. And then we just traded Spencer Dinwiddie, who was only here for 6 months. And then we bring back Ish Smith. We got Howard Neto. Well, what does the next point guard supposed to look like? Are we going to go out there and get another Howard Neto type or another Ish Smith type that's not a threat? Because everybody's complaining about the point guard play. But what kind of point guard is going to be suitable for a Bradley Beal? It's probably going to be a point guard that's not going to be exciting. It's probably a point guard that eventually 6 months later we may end up trading him away because he can't work. So let's just use an example when we go into this. Let's say you bring in a guy like Rajon Rondo. We know Rajon Rondo is not a scorer. That's never been his game. But he's a guy that can facilitate, run the offense. He's definitely going to be vocal. Do you think Rajon Rondo will work alongside Bradley Beal?
Maybe, but it's again, we're going back to the Montrez situation. Rondo's a vet. He's gonna come in here and he's gonna speak.
Absolutely.
And I can't assume that every guy that comes through that door loves Bradley Beal. One thing that D Wade said that still sticks with me: relationships in the NBA are very important. And why hasn't Bill requested a trade yet? What type of relationships does he have with other players around the league? Does anybody know?
We don't know.
Does he have a situation where if he goes there, he's willing to be the third guy and listen to two other guys that's willing to tell him, hey, I need you to be at this spot. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And is he willing to accept that as a player? Like, I think there's something in Bill that he hasn't come to grips with yet. And that's listening to other players. And that's actually following behind other players. I don't think he likes that. He had that issue with Wall. So right. And so, what's funny, man, is that the Wizards media is so funny because they're so quick to put out reports about a player leading the team aside from Bill and say in their article, this is not a shot at Bill, or you could tell that the Wizards media does their best to try to not make it seem like whoever the new guy isn't giving Bill or slighting Bill or degrading Bill or making Bill look bad. The Wizards media is doing a great job protecting Bill in that aspect. But here's what I have to say. It's obvious that you have to bring somebody here who he's going to be able to control or, in my opinion, manipulate, so to speak. Because they don't want that Dinwiddie situation again. They don't want that Trez situation. They don't want to bring guys here who have their own opinions about things and who want to, put their stamp on the team, so to speak, because they want to make sure that Bill has all of the reign to say so.
Yeah, and that's a problem within itself because that's what we're going to be dealing with the next 5 years if this dude is re-signed. We're going to be dealing with the same old. So do I believe he's a cancer? It's a possibility. I think we need to stop acting like he's innocent because, again, we wouldn't be having these questions of why we can't fill this point guard position since John Wall has been traded.
Well, let me say this because I want to say one thing before we end this. The people who say he's not a cancer, I want to know now, and I just wish they would respond sometimes, not indirectly but directly. But I really want to know, like, why would you think that Bill has no involvement or responsibility whatsoever in anything that goes on current with the team and their behavioral issues or even past? Because, when John Wall was cussing out Scott Brooks, in that same practice, Bradley Beal was screaming at Ernie Grunfeld. How do we just automatically remember what John Wall did but forget what Bill did at the same time?
Well, not only did he scream at Ernie Grunfeld, remember he got into a shouting match with Austin Rivers. And what happened to Austin Rivers after that?
He got traded. And once again, anybody who threatens Bill's leadership is not here. Austin Rivers is one. I was critical of Otto Porter, but Otto Porter, and I believe in that players only meeting when guys walked out, you and I both have always assumed that Otto Porter was one of those guys who walked out. But Bradley Beal and John Wall both spoke up in that meeting, and guys didn't listen. And who did they walk out on? They didn't just walk out on John Wall. They also walked out on Bradley Beal. But somehow we only chalk this up to the fact that they may have walked out only on John Wall. Bradley Beal spoke up too. He said he did. Don't take my word for it. Go back and read the articles.
But see, that's the thing. The article, when they talked about it, they focused more on John Wall.
That's what they do. That's what I'm saying. The media
focus on him the most.
The media has done this for years. They do a great job protecting Bradley Beal. Even in that Candace Buckner article, when him and Austin Rivers got into it, they downplayed the argument because they tried to make it sound like, oh well, it wasn't no bad blood there. It was just a back and forth. But he still had an altercation in practice. At the same time, John Wall had an altercation with Jeff Green.
Right.
So how are you talking about one altercation in a way where it made this player look bad, but then you're not talking about another altercation that happened in the same practice that was just as bad because it all happened at the same time? So, but before we end this, I just wanted to give a shout out because we didn't really address these things. Guy BM, thank you for throwing your comments below on State of the Wizards. We promise we'll get around to your questioning. You did state, and I will read it off here. For me, it's always about the lacking ability of the org to properly develop the youth. It's not just about giving them minutes, but also about how. Always wondering what is the fear of trying Denny at point guard instead of a much lower ceiling Neto. Also wondering about a Bill sign and trade chances. I'm just going to give you the short answer of this. In my opinion, and Kjose, you can too. I agree with you 1,000%. I think that the organization is afraid to move on past the idea of certain roles, certain player responsibilities, only because, we're still trying to make the win now make sense around one guy. And I think we're starting to do a better job with trying to give Denny a larger role. Kjose, if you want to briefly.
Yeah, I think it's the same too. We're trying to give Denny a larger role, but that's due to the fact that Bradley Beal is not playing. He's out for the season. So you're starting to see these guys get a chance to be, to play to the potential that we expected them. Now, the only thing that we could hope for as fans is that the organization will come to grips that, hey, you know what? We have something here. We don't necessarily have to keep Bradley Beal here because as we talked about earlier, salary cap wise, it just does not make sense to re-sign Bradley Beal. Another thing is that with sign and trade, what do I think? I think it's 60-40. 60% chance that we move on, 40% chance that he sticks around. With that trade kicker that I don't believe nobody was even aware of until Bobby Marks spoke about it, it actually gives you that hope that, okay, there's a possibility he can move and still get his money. Because the narrative of the $60 to $70 million he's leaving on the table completely got erased once that information was put out there. So I don't think a lot of folks who covers the team knew that Bradley Beal had a 15% trade kicker, which is why they're not talking about it. But as you can see, myself and Dcan, we're talking about it. We're putting it out there, letting everybody know that he can still get his money. All he has to do is opt in. If he's traded, it's a 15% trade kicker. And each time his payments each year, if he signs a 4-year deal, whichever that team is, I think it increases with about 4 or 5%, something like that. So he's going to get his money either way, and he will get his 5th year.
All right. So the last thing, Alex Wynn, and then there's a bunch of numbers after Alex. Alex, you know who you are. You did state to us that, or you did ask us, have we done a midseason report card? Grade the players A to F. We won't have time to do it this episode, but we will do it. We will do it. Matter of fact, we may go ahead and include that on the next podcast episode. I will make sure that that's one of the priorities that we cover on Wiz Takes. But to answer your question in short, I'm going as a team right now, and I'll go over player report cards on the podcast separately. As a team, I would say that the team right now is at a D+. Overall grade at the midseason, I think it's below average right now. I won't even say that they're average, and their record shows it. I think that even though we started off fast, there were a lot of missed opportunities in games that we should have won earlier in the season. We actually should have had a better record than what we actually had. And that may be saying too much because we weren't even expected to be at the place we were at. But if you think about it, we controlled a lot of our own destiny in a lot of those games. We were winning games we weren't supposed to win early on, but we were losing games we were supposed to win. And eventually it all caught up to us that, we just weren't as good as we thought we were around December. So, Kjose, if you want to go ahead and just take us home, man.
All right, so I would grade them as a team. I give them a D. There's quite a few things that I didn't like. I didn't like the whole showcasing the players because we shut down Daniel Gafford because of the trade situation, so I wasn't a fan of that. We went away from what was making us successful at the beginning of the season. That changed, in December. And then we completely just turned into a Scott Brooks type team. So the team gets a D because they're not exceeding expectations. They're actually now are underachievers. And I don't know how the way the season is going to end in the second half. Everybody keeps talking about how easy our schedule is, but we got to keep in mind, this team is night and day. They show up sometimes for some of these big games, and then they disappear in some of these games that you expect them to show up on, which are the teams that they're better than. They sometimes just don't show up. But that's how I feel to get a D.
All right. So go ahead and take us home, man.
All right. So this will conclude episode 20 of State of the Wiz. Hope we was able to cover as much as we can. We are going to talk about some of the other topics that we weren't able to cover. But I want to have you guys like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment down below. Let us know what you thought about this episode. If you have other topics that you want us to address, we'll definitely do that. Continue to keep engaging with us on Twitter. We have no issues responding back to you guys. So this is Kjose. This is also Dcan. We say good night.
Good night.